What would you do if the car with which you must compete for a World Cup is unable to finish a race without violating the regulation for a structural failure? What if all winter work ended up manufacturing a homeless trap? Today I reveal what nobody told you about the brutal technical collapse of Ferrari SF25. What Ferrari built by 2025 was not simply a racing car. It was a manifesto, an attempt to redefine his technical identity in the modern era of Formula One. When the team presented the SF25, he did it with a clear narrative. They had learned from their past mistakes, they had polished every detail of the SF24, and with the arrival of Lewis Hamilton, they intended to break with years of structural frustrations. But that speech collapsed at the time the wheels touched the asphalt. From the first day of the test in Bahrain, the tension was felt in the Ferrari box. The engineers soon detect a series of worrying inconsistencies. The most serious, unstable behavior in rapid curves, combined with an excessive tendency to touch background when the car was loaded with fuel. At that moment, many internal alarms began to sound, but the decision was already taken. There was no going back. The SF25 was not a half-end prototype. It was the race car, and its platform immovable for the whole season. The car design opted for a new architecture in the pull rod-type front suspension, a configuration that has demonstrated aerodynamic benefits in other teams such as McLaren and Red Bull. The problem was that Ferrari did not adequately consider the structural implications of this change in the global dynamics of the car. The SF25 lost stiffness in the rear, which generated a disconnection between the entrance and curve output. The pilots felt the rear train yield without prior notice, which compromised traction and demanded desperate adjustments in the tuning. Internally, some team engineers described the situation as a design paradox, which should improve the efficiency of the car, ended up destroying its balance. The SF25 platform works well in simulation, but in the reality of track, with irregular asphalt, variable loads and lateral wind conditions, it suffers dynamic collapses. The bottom of the car at times becomes an inert mass that bounces against the asphalt without control, causing a progressive aerodynamic loss return to return. That was the turning point. Ferrari was not just losing tenths. I was losing the soul of the project. Because what should be the most competitive car of Ferrari's post-Hill era became a technical and emotional load. In the silent nightmare of a team that, once again, was trapped between ambition and reality. Most Formula One failures can make up with words. There is talk of development zone or learning curve. It was a technical collapse, pure and simple. And the scenario in which everything came to light could not be more symbolic. The Chinese Grand Prix. A high compression and high compression areas that put the chassis, suspension and structural stiffness of any car. In that environment, the SF25 broke. Not figuratively. The regulation literally broke. Hamilton was disqualified by excessive wear of the wooden plate of the flat background, a piece that acts as a technical legality meter, designed to ensure that cars do not circulate too low. Ferrari tried to explain it as an unfortunate combination of fuel load, potholes and pilot style. But the truth is that the wear was not random. It was a direct symptom of a systemic failure. The lack of structural rigidity of the rear train, which caused the car to sink under load, generating constant impacts against the asphalt. It was not an isolated case or a setup error. It was the confirmation that the car, as designed, violated the regulation simply when running. And the most revealing thing was that it was not only Hamilton. Leclerc was also disqualified. His case was not due to the wear of the iron, but by a total weight below the allowed minimum. But that infraction, far from being a separate anecdote, is connected with the same structural problem. A car that touches a background repeatedly not only wears components, it also undergoes material losses due to abrasion, alters weight distribution, and can even modify the way loads affect the consumption of liquids or the conservation of the hydraulic system. Everything is interconnected. And when the chassis does not maintain its integrity, the consequences extend throughout the system. This design crisis has its epicenter in Ferrari's decision to implement a pull rod-type front suspension without adequately adapting the mass balance and support in the rear. This conceptual dissonance has generated an extremely unstable car that needs to be piloted with constant corrections to stay within the legal margins. But in a calendar like 2025, with high-load tracks such as Suzuka, Silverstone, Spa, or even Baku, the probabilities of repetition of the problem are very high. And then there is the hidden problem. One that does not appear in the technical documents, but that can do more damage than any structural failure: the pilot's confidence. Charles Leclerc has said it between the lines. The assisted management system presents erratic behavior in situations of high lateral demand. The steering wheel responds inconsistently, especially in high-speed curves. And that, for a pilot, is like running with bandaged eyes. Because no matter how much talent you have, if you cannot predict how the car will respond when you throw yourself at 280 kilometers per hour towards a sequence of linked curves. That problem, which manifested strongly in Silverstone, is not new. It crawls from pre-season. But Ferrari decided to shut him up, minimize it, hide it under the narrative that it was a fine pending adjustment. The reality is that it is a critical failure in the hydraulic assistance system that compromises both precision and track security. And when that variable is combined with a fund that is wearing below the legal minimum, the result is a car that, in its base configuration, cannot compete without infringing the regulation. Here we are not talking about strategy errors or poor tire management. We talk about a badly conceived car from its foundations, which cannot even complete a race without crossing the red lines of the technical regulations. And the most disturbing thing is that there is no quick solution. You cannot change a rear suspension mid-season without redoing all the chassis. And with the budget limit at stake, Ferrari is caught. You have to continue competing with a car that the engineers themselves describe as legally unstable. The SF25 crisis is not just a design or results problem. It is a crisis that threatens to break Ferrari's internal structures. Because unlike other years where deficiencies were visible but manageable, in 2025 the situation has climbed to a level in which neither the talent of the pilots nor the experience of the engineers can cover the magnitude of the disaster. What is at stake is not a lost championship. It is the technical credibility of a team that has been pursuing ghosts more than a decade. Inside doors, the tension has climbed at alarming levels. Sources close to the team report daily discussions between aerodynamic, mechanical, and simulation departments. Each defends his plot, his interpretation of the data, his truth. But while the car continues to play background, disqualifying itself by its own architecture, nobody assumes the concept error. And that lack of clear technical leadership is slowly eroding the cohesion of the factory in Maranello. The arrival of Lewis Hamilton, far from stabilizing the team, has amplified the media focus on each decision. Hamilton did not come to Ferrari to fight for points. He came to win, to write the final chapter of his legacy with an 8th world title. But what he has found is a car that not only does not allow him to compete, but requires an anti-natural adaptation. And the worst part is that this adaptation has been in vain. Lewis has had to change his braking style, copy the Leclerc approach, and even modify his interaction with the technical team, everything to barely finish races without violating the regulation. It is an unacceptable scenario for a 7-time world champion. But there is an even more delicate point. Ferrari knows that he cannot completely redesign the car in the middle of the season without breaking the budget limit imposed by the FIA. And that leaves the team trapped in a perverse paradox. Continue to develop a broken concept or paralyze the evolution to save resources and focus on the 2026 car. In both scenarios, the immediate result is the same: resign the 2025 season. But in the second case, they could at least prevent the story from being repeated. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc is found in a silent dilemma. With a current contract, but with latent offers from other structures, the Monegasco pilot is beginning to lose patience. It has already been the silent squire of reconstruction for years. And now that it should be leading a solid project, it is trapped in a repeated narrative. Promises of evolution that fall apart with the checkered flag. His confidence in the car and in the team, his erosion more with each technical error and every return that must be completed with a steering wheel that does not respond as he should. If Ferrari does not face this crisis with deep surgery, not only technical but structural, no matter how many world champions put behind the wheel, the result will be the same: a beautiful car, fast in simulation, and broken in reality. Now the most important question is not whether Ferrari can win a career in 2025. The real question is whether Ferrari can survive this season without disintegrating as a competitive project. Because SF25 is not just a technical failure, it is a warning. An alarm sign that, in Maranello, strategic decisions are being taken under institutional pressure that leaves no room for reflection, self-criticism, or structural correction. There are no miraculous solutions. A complete redesign of the rear suspension is practically unfeasible under the current financial regulations. Changing the architecture of the car would mean not only months of development, but a direct blow to the budget that is already conditioned by contracts, logistics, and the development of the 2026 car. And if Ferrari decides not to intervene, each new circuit will bring a new nightmare. Suzuka with its rapid direction changes, Silverstone with its constant forces, Spa with its aggressive undulation. All are scenarios where the SF25 is intended for suffering. In this context, the team's address must make difficult decisions. Continue to build on a failed base or cut by the healthy and concentrate all the resources on the car next year. Prioritize short-term performance to calm media storm or protect long-term vision with a conservative technical policy. Each response will cost. We are not facing a simple performance downturn. We are facing a potential deep restructuring, a complete review of the technical philosophy of one of the most important teams in the history of motor racing. Because if this car fails and the internal culture does not change, not even Lewis Hamilton will be enough to change the course.